Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and welcome back to another episode of the Art of War Guide series, where we aim to cover all sorts of battle-related tips and tricks for Total War 3 Kingdoms. In today's episode, we will mainly focus on a not-so-obvious keyboard command that is a central tool to add to your arsenal. So the command in question here is Alt-Right-Click, which will allow you to manually fire your siege weapons in the game. And by manual firing, I mean targeting an area on the battle map instead of an enemy unit, as you would typically just right-click on the unit you wish to target, whether you're issuing a melee or range command. But in the case of siege weapons, you have the option to manually fire them as well. So let's jump into a battle here to see this in action. And as you can see here, we have a custom battle where I have all three types of siege weapons, including the newest Juggernauts in play. I added some fancy heavy spear guards just to protect them, including the turtle formation protection for the Juggernaut unit, as this will protect them from enemy projectiles, which is quite handy. And on the enemy side, they're very far away, so that we can make a point. We have Cao Cao's army. Very big army. We gave them yellow dragons, protector heavens, and heavy crossbowmen. I purposely didn't give them any cavalry, and I didn't give them any siege weapons, just for demonstration purposes. We're also not really going to fight this battle, but we will show a couple points with this one before moving on to other scenarios. As using the Alt-Right-Click trick, you can use your siege weapons much more favorably in at least 5 scenarios, and we'll try to cover each one, starting with the basic. So let's say I select on a trebuchet here. You see here, this is their range indicator, correct? This zone right here is the no fire zone, too close for the projectile to land, and everything in between this line and this line is units that you can target, right? This is the range indicator. You can right click on any unit within this zone and you will fire. If you click something beyond the zone, you'll move into range and then fire. So how does manual firing help us? Well, if you first simply hold down Alt, you notice this little circle that appears on your map. This little circle is the targeting zone. It shows kind of the splatter pattern, or the splash zone, of the shots you'll fire, because accuracy is not a guaranteed with siege weapons. So if we move the circle farther, you see the circle expanding. And the reason why it's expanding farther away than close by is your accuracy falls off the farther your shot is. So at the edge of the zone, the circle is the biggest, and at the points closest to the no firing line, the circle is the smallest. This is the same for the crossbow. You start out very small, and you end up very big at the end. And even with the Juggernaut units, which do not have a no hit zone, they fire very flat and linear, and they fire straight in a short distance. You see the circle will get bigger, just a little bit. Not enough to really impact things, because this size right here, it's smaller than the unit size, so you can still target a unit pretty well using this technique. But this is available for all siege weapons, and all you have to do when you have the Alt selected is right click on the spot you wish to fire, and your siege weapons will just fire at that spot once they are reloaded. So that's how you utilize this technique. Now, how might this technique help us? Well, in the first scenario, as the enemy are marching towards you, you can get in a couple cheap shots for free. So normally, we can't select that unit to target. It'll be outside of our zone, and we'll have trouble hitting it. And they're still moving, but instead, if we target at the edge of our range and fire, notice how some of the shots will fall short, but some of the shot will go long. And that way, we can get a shot in before they even enter the zone, where normally we can only target them starting now, and then there will be a firing delay. So technically, we can push out about 2 extra shots worth of damage onto the enemy units before we even have them inside our range. So this is a neat trick you can do with your trebuchets, especially in open field fights like this one, because this allows you to utilize all your ammo before they close that gap. Now obviously with manual fire, you have to adjust each time in between shots, or else they will keep firing at the same spot even after the enemy units have moved past. So that's scenario number 1, extending your range. And let's move on to the second scenario. Alrighty, so here we have our second scenario. In this case, we are the sieging army attacking a settlement, and they have some siege weapons on the wall, so they're actually hitting us right now, but that's fine, doesn't actually interfere with our demonstration. And what we're going to talk about is the AI reaction to being fired at. So for example, if I right click a unit, right, I'm going to fire that unit, the shots goes up into the air, we come down, hit them. You notice how they moved, how they ran away from the shot as it was coming down. Because in the game, whenever you issue a command to an enemy unit, whether that's charging at them with melee units or cavalry, or shooting at them with archers or siege weapons, the AI will know that you issue the command to them, and they will react accordingly, whether that's to put themselves into these loose formations or to just simply move away from your shot, and that really decreases your accuracy. As we are getting pounded, now we lost one, doesn't matter. So if you instead use something like manual fire into a zone, the AI won't know that they're going to get hit until it's too late, until they see the shots in the air, and you have a much better time of hitting them than simply right-clicking on a unit. So that's another neat trick you can use with manual fire. Aside from that, as we're routing away, you don't have to actually target an individual unit or a target area. What you want to do in battle is you want to fight the highest density of enemy units, and you want to fire at those zones. So something like this, it's not a really good demonstration here, but assume this is a non-gated battle, which we can create in the future, but as we're getting wiped out here by the siege weapon. But the idea is you always want to hit at the highest density area on the map, even if it's in between a unit or away from a unit. We're hitting structures here that's blocking us, but the whole idea is, let's assume it's a non-walled settlement and the AI is charging out at the gap in the gates. That area will be where you want to hit, because you inflict the maximum amount of casualties. You never really want to just target an individual unit. You want to hit the highest density, as that way, as you miss with some shots, you still hit other units, and that will help you maximize your casualty. So those are the 2 points of why you should use manual firing. 1, to prevent AI from reacting to your shots or your commands, and 2, to always target high density areas rather than targeting a certain unit. And then we have 2 more points, so let's move on to the next scenario. Alrighty, so we're here in our 4th scenario, and our 3rd battle type. We are in a gate pass defense battle, and the army that we're facing has changed, and our army has changed as well. We're now utilizing 6 Juggernaut unit, and this scenario is exclusive to the Juggernaut unit, as this is quite a new unit and it plays out quite differently from our other typical siege weapon, given that this unit does not have projectiles. It fires a jet of flame out in front, and it will be used much differently than other units given short range, but it does have high sustained firing time, as in once it does fire, it will fire for a long time, and it's very good at guarding narrow places like gates. So in this scenario, what we will do is we will use 3 of these to demonstrate how we can hold a choke point using manual firing as a means of suppressive firing. We can do this at narrow chokes like these as well. You do want to spread them out a bit. You don't want them to all cluster together, then the back ones will kind of get in the ways of the ones in the front, and so forth. The other units we are really not using. Let Menghua come. We give them all elephants, so the only thing they can do here, don't fire at them, is they can charge the gate. They have no options to climb the wall. You cannot dismount your elephants. So Juggernaut is going to be here having a barbecue. So here's going to be our 3 units, and you can see we can use manual fire to fire a zone, let's say here. And as these elephants bash open the door, led by Menghua on his elephant, we'll be able to host a barbecue. Now, obviously, we are going to take damage. If you want to use some of these spear guards, like overlapping on top of where the units are, because the units are the ones that will get hit, you can definitely do that. Put yourself in some sort of shield wall. That will work very well. But here they come. The gates is not going to hold for long. We have a unit rushing to the rescue. And this is also great for when you don't mind suiciding one of your unit. because you can hold them in place with a unit, let's say a Z militia. You don't have to use something expensive like the heavy spear guard. But that gate's gonna fall. And our guy is not gonna make it. Run, run, run. Here they come. Turn off auto fire. And we go crispy. Extra crispy. And you can hold this line. Now if you have a unit here, obviously you'll hold this a lot better. And our second fire will come. We'll throw some traps to the ground to slow them down. And this is quite a sight. Your units will get killed, but when you manual fire, your units will not care about friendly fire. And we'll just host a barbecue here at the gates. We let a couple through. We probably should have thrown a unit in here in between, but you can see the effects of holding a gate with traps and a barbecue out like that. And that's it. That's a great way to use Juggernauts. If you have Juggernauts in your army composition where you host a front line of units without a narrow choke, you can do this to kind of use your front line units to hold the enemy in place and then burn them using a similar technique. Now all these guys have routed because we didn't protect them. Notice how the machines are still fine, especially on this side, but the units have already routed away. But that's how you want to use these, because once you get into melee, they're completely worthless. So let's move on to our last scenario. Alrighty, so we're here in our final scenario. We have the bird's eye view of Chen. It's not walled this time. We are the attackers still. Cao Cao has a small force, Sima Yi technically has a small force inside. And the point of this showcase is that manual fire is great because sometimes we don't want to hit units. And the most common and useful scenario of using manual fire is actually to set fires to things like a town or forest. If you want to burn up some of the trees that the enemy are about to march through it, so that you can let the forest fire itself deal massive amount of damage, as well as morale shock for being next to a fire source that's at least 4 points of morale hit, that's a great tool for you to use. And when you're fighting towns or anything that's not walled, or even if it's a walled settlement, you can ignore the actual wall and burn up the entire town inside, and the fire will spread from district to district. Each of these zones will be contained, but as long as you set a fire on them, they will spread quite easily, and all the towers will fall because the towers are connected to these districts. Therefore, if you burn the entire town to a crisp, add on the negative 15 points of penalty to morale from night battle, and then settlement loss is usually worth about 20 points when you burn down the entire settlement, most enemy units will simply rout away. So sometimes it's just really good to watch the world burn. So let's select on one of them, and you just want to gently tap one shot at a district inside the town and watch your machines light it up. And all you really need is one if the weather is good. If it's raining, you might need a few more shots. You don't need to aim for towers, these are hard to hit. As long as you set these to fire, you see the 100% fire damage, and then the damage goes up, and then it will be spreading to nearby structures. You see that fire damage tick up to 100 almost instantly, and you just do the same thing. Tap every single district that you can find with all your siege weapons and just go to town. Watch the world burn. And don't have to stop. Burn that all. That one has not been hit yet. And it's not going to interfere with you claiming the town. There will be no damage to it. I'll also burn this down, the Imperial Palace. Speed it up, and then we can click on a unit. So you see their morale, you see the settlement damage kicking in. It's going to go to about 20 points when the whole town is about burned out. And you don't even need to fight them, they will just simply crater because they feel that the battle is lost and the town is on fire. And this is something that Zhuge Liang did quite a lot, use fire attacks. Although often he burned his own town down, with the purpose of luring the enemy into the town. And then I can't issue commands from here, can I? No, I cannot. Okay. Yeah, have to go back in. Well, that's already burned to a crisp. We can burn the Grand Guest House. They built some nice buildings here. And you can see the towers are catching fire as well. The fire will spread to them naturally. Now, some will be missed, and you have to go back in and just, you know, add in that little bit of damage, but most of them will be gone. And the barricades will burn as well. Now, this part is a little bit more self-contained, so it's harder to set fire to all of these. Now, who has a shot on these? You have a shot on this. Go for it. And we can check for morale again. 29 now. 16 points of settlement damage already onto the town. And we haven't burned all of it yet. And that's just a very simple technique you can use to destroy the enemy morale in siege battles, and combine that with certain things like night battle, and they came out to attack us, good for them. Or if you have an open field fight, let's assume we are, this bird's eye view is a little hard to control. Let's say we're here, right? Let's assume it's open field, our siege weapons are here, the enemy's behind this patch of trees, they're marching towards us. Just have them, you know, attack manually these trees, light them up. They will do a similar amount of effect as this. Units next to them will get a morale shock for being next to a fire source, and also they will be hit as they move through this as well, and that will be under fire. So you're really doing a lot of damage with the fire as well as the hit themselves as they move through an area which otherwise you will not be able to target the units at all. But oftentimes, you don't need to hit units. You have manual fire to burn down Imperial Palaces to a crisp like this, and you know, that's all 5 scenarios of using manual fire. It's definitely a very essential tool, especially for low-level trebuchets that start out level 1 with really, really wide circles. The alt control circle that you will see, we gotta go down again, where you go with a unit, and when you select the alt, you see the circle getting bigger and bigger. This circle size will depend on your accuracy. So let's say your trebuchet becomes level 10, then the circle up here might end up looking like this, where you have almost pinpoint accuracy even at farther distances. So that's going to be the evolution of your trebuchet. At those points, you know, when you're very, very high level, then you can feel free to just select the enemy unit. But early on in the game, when that's not an option, where if you just select on a unit, you might miss most of your shot, it's much better to hit, you know, clusters using manual fire and such, and just watch the world burn. And with that, we're going to be ending this episode of The Art of War. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. For those of you who already know this technique from watching my Let's Plays, just a little review of the different scenarios and options you have with it. For those of you who have not heard of this or have not played other Total War games where this is also possible, this is a neat trick that you can utilize in Total War 3 Kingdoms to make your siege weapons even more devastating. Because as you can see, we just right-click that unit, we barely hit them with 2 volleys. If we just predict their movement and just target a zone like that, we'll do much better in terms of damage. You just have to get used to the reload speed of your weapons and the distance to kind of make a prediction call to where they're going to be. And that way you can get better accuracy with your shots. In this case, we didn't predict them moving that way. We thought they were going to move towards us. Anyhow, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye!